So the Devil May Cry anime on Netflix debuted not too long ago, and it's something that was trending on social media when it first dropped, and I feel like it got a polarizing reception for the most part because while some people were praising it for its graphics, its animation, um, its soundtrack, and it having a vibe that captured the early 2000s perfectly, it was also criticized for being woke and all that stuff. And honestly, like, what would you expect because it's Netflix? But I just like the amount of effort that was put into this, and I know there are hardcore Devil May Cry fans who love the gaming series, and I think they were the ones who were the most vocal about the anime not directly following the video game. And when I think about the video games, I don't know. To me, it kind of seemed like a mix between Devil May Cry 1 and 3. And I say that because I believe Mary, aka Lady, she appeared first in Devil May Cry 3. And obviously, Capcom knew what they were doing with this because they knew that Devil May Cry 3 was the most popular entry in the entire franchise. But I believe there were about 8 different episodes, and I feel like the pacing was perfect, It didn't drag out, it wasn't too long or anything like that. Dante is a fun character, but at the same time, he comes off as naive because he doesn't know the fact that he's a demon and that he's the son of Sparta, the one who, rebelled against the king of hell and all that stuff. And, and I don't know, I feel like the way he was presented at first was pretty cool, and there were some comical moments, like, the shootout scene in the apartment where a bunch of henchmen were trying to shoot at him, and he was dodging, and then he was beside them, and he was like, "What are we shooting at?" That was hilarious, probably the funniest thing that Dante did um in the entire, anime, and, I feel like the problem with Dante overall was that despite all the cool things that he did, he got captured like twice, and it just made him look like look weak as hell. And I mean, it was kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like this guy's supposed to be a demon and all this other stuff, and also like the portrayal of Mary. It's like I know a lot of people really didn't like her or how she was portrayed in this because she was cold hearted, she was, cruel and all this other stuff. And, she worked for Darkcom and all this. And and honestly, like if you look at episode 6, it kind of gives you a deeper dive into what her childhood was like and how like what she went through traumatized her, and her losing her family and her fantasy life being shattered and all that stuff. I thought the Alice in Wonderland reference in episode 6 was rather interesting. It was something that I was not expecting. And um and I don't know. I mean, most of this anime pretty much revolved around White Rabbit being the villain, and I think White Rabbit was like in the manga series for Devil May Cry 3. He was pretty much the main villain, and pretty much he's vindictive and wants to unleash, I guess, a hellish apocalypse on the earth by getting two pieces of an amulet, one that Dante has, and I guess Virgil had the other one, and basically using a sword and I guess a drop of Dante's blood to open, I guess, the portal um, between Earth and Hell. And I don't know. I feel like it got to a point where, you kind of have to look at both sides, and it made you think. It wasn't just like things happening and then you're just like whatever. It made you think like who like the real villains were and all that stuff. Because at one point, White Rabbit accused Darkcom of being like worse than him and being worse than his kind and all that stuff. And even though a lot of what White Rabbit did was messed up, but at the same time, Darkcom like made him who he was. And at the same time, when Mary learns all this, like towards the end or towards like one of the final episodes, I think it was like episode 7 or whatever. Um, I guess like she has an epiphany that humans are horrible, and that it's like I'm not too different from White Rabbit. It's like we're similar, but we're different. The main difference is, I guess, Mary, along with Darkcom, is trying to protect the Earth from demons. And at the same time, I mean, Darkcom has this hatred of, demons because obviously, they're demon hunters and all that stuff. But at the same time, Darkcom made he contributed to making White Rabbit what he was. And then you had a lot of demons that were in the world and that were just like refugees and all this stuff. And they were basically just, killed by Darkcom just out of fear for the most part. And it just makes Darkcom look really horrible. And and I don't know. I just feel like in that whole conflict with Darkcom and White Rabbit and what he's trying to do, I feel like, both sides are bad, you know what I mean? It's just that I guess one side is the lesser of the two evils, but both sides are bad, they're both monsters. I think the genetic testing of like demons and stuff like that was really messed up. Um yeah, I mean, I feel like, this I think this is a really good, M-rated, anime. You don't get too many of those nowadays. And I feel like this was like 10 times better than anything you'd see on Toonami nowadays, despite it being quote unquote woke. And I appreciate the effort, the soundtracks, that were included, in this anime because I really feel like it added to its epicness, and it's something that longtime fans of the Devil May Cry series could appreciate, and especially those who are fans of like pop music back in the early 2000s. You might hear a couple of theme songs that you're familiar with and all that, but all in all, I felt like it definitely blew away my expectations. I wasn't expecting all that. I thought the storytelling was good. Um, I don't know. I feel like with I don't know. I feel like Dante didn't have as much of a backstory or character development as Mary did, and I think that's mainly because, I guess Mary's past basically traumatized her and it changed her and it made her cold and ruthless. While with Dante, it's like he's still haunted by the memories of losing his family, but at the same time, it didn't really have that much of a detrimental effect to him. He just knew that he needed to keep his amulet as a promise to his mother before she was killed. And yeah, and I think it was kind of shocking how there was like a lot of stuff that Dante didn't know about himself, and I do feel that for the most part, Dante as a character, he could be fun at times, but there are other times where it's just like I don't know. He just looks helpless for no reason, and I think that was something that some people were kind of turned off by. But overall, I feel like this is one of the better anime or one of the better video game film adaptations that we've gotten in quite some time. I feel like the whole thing with White Rabbit, it kind of reminds me of like what Dracula tried to do in Castlevania, where Dracula lost someone that was close to him, and as a result, he wanted to bring an apocalypse to Earth and wanted to, I guess, kill as many people as he possibly could. So, yeah, I mean, White Rabbit is not too much different from Dracula, but whatever. And and I don't know, I feel like it's twisted because both Darkcom and White Rabbit both think they're doing the right thing. They both think they're heroes, even though the things they're doing is wrong, you know. But it's like I said earlier, it's just that one is the lesser of the two evils. Doesn't mean that like one side is completely right or anything like that. But but yeah, honestly, I'm impressed by what I saw thus far. Could it have been better? I don't know. It really depends on who you ask. I'm pretty sure we're gonna get more episodes later down the line because I know, like with the Castlevania series that appeared on Netflix, we got I think we got multiple seasons. So at some point, we're most likely going to get more than one season for Devil May Cry, especially considering how popular the franchise still is. A lot of people are still waiting for Devil May Cry 6, which Capcom has not announced just yet. And Devil May Cry 5, I think, was their best selling game, if I'm not mistaken. And and yeah, I mean, I honestly feel like Devil May Cry overall, it's definitely a pretty good video game series. It's something that's going to continue to be popular throughout the rest of the decade, and I honestly feel like another season is something that people are going to be ecstatic about once it shows up.